Arthur Miller's play, The Crucible, opened first on Broadway in 1953. He wrote the play about the Salem witch trials in response to McCarthyism. Initially not well received by the critics, the drama went on to win the Tony for Best Play and became Arthur Miller's most produced work. This week, The Crucible returns to Broadway for the first time in nearly 50 years. Joining me now is the playwright Arthur Miller, the director, Sir Richard Eyre, and Laura Linney, one of the stars of the production. I am pleased to have them all here. Welcome. Seemed like a long time, 50 years?
Seems like yesterday.
Does it really?
Well, plus a few aches and pains.
Yeah. Where does this stand in all the plays that you have written? I mean, is it at the top of your list?
Well, I'm very proud of this play for numerous reasons.
One, because of the politics of it?
Well, yes, but it's also the represented an attempt on my part to really create something rather than remember something.
Well said.
And it was a big challenge at the time.
Because?
Well, you're going back several hundred years, try to figure out how people felt at that time and how they sounded, which was equally important. And it was very risky, and I'm kind of proud that I did it.
And proud to see it back on Broadway.
Oh, yeah. This is a marvelous production.
I know it is. We're going to get to that. But tell me what makes something happen so that in 2002, this play, written by this famous playwright, comes back after 50 years.
If anybody could understand this, he could make millions. It's a mystery.
Yeah, it just has its moment.
Nobody can predict this. Nobody can predict it. I mean, I don't know what would have happened had it opened last year or the year before or next year.
Yeah.
It's just there is an openness on the public for this play now. I can theorize about it, but it's...
Don't theorize then.
Well, I think the play is dealing with the disintegration of a society. It's a play about paranoia and hysteria. And I imagine that people are reacting to it because they feel similar things now, namely that an attack can come from anywhere, which is what was happening in Salem, that they weren't quite sure why, that they weren't sure what they would do or what they should do. It's all up in the air. And in this play, that's the way it is. It is a play about a town that is simply exploding in fear.
And here we have a society.
And here we've got a society which I wouldn't say it's exploding, but it is
nervous.
Scared.
Yeah.
It's nervous.
Because it now realizes it may be vulnerable and it's an unknown enemy that they can't see.
Exactly. Exactly.
What brought you to this?
Arthur.
Arthur did.
It's a play that I've loved. I'd say it was just about my favorite play, excluding Shakespeare.
Why?
Because, in fact, it has a lot in common with Shakespeare's plays. It does a thing that the theatre does very well, which is deals with the whole society, takes a microcosm. It's possible to put a whole society on a stage. That's one of the attractive things about theatre. You can put a group of people on a stage of various levels and social classes, and it stands for a whole society. And this is what Shakespeare does, and it goes from the top to the bottom. And also, what Arthur does in this play is to concertina from scenes of great intimacy between two people, two scenes which involve the entire society there on stage. So it's the epic scale of it. The language is, of course, in a sense, Shakespearean, and Arthur has steeped himself in Shakespeare and in the transcripts of the trial and in the King James Bible, which came out, only about 70 years before these people. And these people, their language would be very, very informed by that. And it's a language of huge muscularity and immense energy. There's a kind of the play is wired. And when after the first run through, when we were sitting slightly dazed at the force of the play, Arthur said, in a slightly bemused way, he said, "This is a young man's play. I couldn't write this now." Because of the sheer kind of muscular energy of the play. Yeah. So I guess that's what attracts me, apart from the fact that the story, it has a hero, and the hero whose moral dilemma fascinates me. The moral choice, most of us aren't faced with real moral choices. Do we risk our lives? Do we risk our families' lives?
And what's worthy of making a choice to risk it all?
Yeah. And this is one of the reasons we're drawn towards stories about war and stories about society in extremis, because we're fascinated by the speculation of whether, given the moral choices, we would take the right road.
We would have the courage.
Absolutely. And of course, Arthur was put in that position facing House Un-American Activities Committee.
You.
Me.
You. Arthur Miller writes it. Richard Eyre directs it. Liam Neeson.
Not bad.
Not bad.
Not bad.
But
not
you ain't
bad. Not
you
bad.
ain't bad either.
Well, thank you.
So
thank
he comes to you and you say, "Yippee!"
You say, "You bet," is what you say.
Where do I start?
You say, "Thank you, thank you, thank you."
Yeah.
And yes.
Who is Elizabeth Proctor?
Elizabeth Proctor is a farmer's wife who is trying to do, sort of the best she can and cope with human emotions that she's not familiar with, I think. I think that's fair to say. And, she's faced with a husband who has had an affair, and has her relationship with God and her relationship to her family and her community, and all of a sudden it is being attacked, and she's being attacked. She feels she's being attacked, and she's trying to do the right thing for everyone involved.
Take a look at this. This is a scene from the play in which you are urging Liam Neeson, John Proctor, to go to Salem to explain the accusations of witchcraft in the community and their falseness. Here it is.
Abigail brings the other girls into the court, and where she walks, the crowd will part like the sea for Israel. And people are brought before them, and if they howl and scream and fall to the floor, the person's clapped in the jail for bewitching them.
It is a black mystery.
I think you must go to Salem, John. I think so. You must tell them it's a fraud.
Aye, it is. It is, surely.
Let you go to Ezekiel Cheever, he knows you well. Tell him what she said to you last week at her uncle's house. She said it had naught to do with witchcraft, did she not?
Aye, she did. She did.
God forbid you keep that from the court, John. I think they must be told.
Aye, they must. They must. It's a wonder they do believe it.
Let you go to Salem now, John. Let you go tonight.
Oh, thank God.
When you look at something that is in fact a video portrait of something happening on a stage, it can never capture the depth of it, of the feeling, of the passion of the theater. I mean, there are very few times I've ever seen on television. You know much more about this than I do. I mean, you wrote a book about stuff like this. It's because what you said.
I think it's the whole breathing apparatus is different.
It's the
See,
sound.
we're sitting here, we're talking like this. Now, supposing we were on the stage.
Yeah, right
four
here.
of us.
Yeah.
So you'd be doing this, and you take deeper breaths.
Yeah.
Your sinuses are different.
Yeah. You're aware of projecting. You're aware of projecting stuff. Yeah, that's
and
what
you're also sharing. You go into a theatre with a lot of individuals, and that if the play works, those individuals become a community.
Yeah.
And there you are, finding yourself with 1,200 people feeling more or less the same thing. And that's, the sum of that experience is considerably greater than the part.
And there's nothing better than attentive silence from a huge house. Attentive silence. Concentrated, full, loud silence.
It's like the air is charged.
The air is thick with it. And I don't think I've ever experienced it to such a degree as I have on stage with this play.
Yeah.
It is quite remarkable.
The silence of the audience, the attentive silence of the audience.
And there's a sense, it's almost that we're slightly ahead of the audience, and we can feel them right behind us, and you feel the wave as the story unfolds, and
I love the way they
quite
gasp.
wonderful.
Sometimes there's a moment in the second act when the girl comes back, servant girl comes back from the court, and Proctor says, there are 14 arrested, and she bursts into tears and says, no, there are 39 now. And quite often the audience go, oh! And it's so thrilling,
Yeah,
because it
is
also
thrilling.
means they don't know the play.
But how much does it mean anything to you work on Broadway?
I guess the stakes are high. I always feel bad when people talk about American theatre as if it's Broadway. There's this huge national theatre from coast to coast, hundreds, thousands of theatres, regional theatres.
And most people don't know about them.
Most people don't know
I couldn't name
about
5 regional theatres.
And there's some very, very good work, and inventive work, and work of great quality going on in all those theatres, and yet people just concentrate on the celebrity end of it, Broadway. Having said that, I couldn't ask for better conditions to do this play and a better cast. And this isn't propaganda. I'm saying this because they are remarkable. These are the cream of American theatre actors.
And we know how this works in a film, but in a stage production, who chooses the... You?
I do.
You
He
do.
does.
Yeah. Yes. I mean, with consultation, but
Yeah.
yes, in the end.
Yeah.
Thank God.
Thank God.
You know, one thing that's interesting that you brought up, and is something that I'm sort of constantly going through, is that even though everyone feels that they know the Crucible, most people don't. There's a whole generation, at least my generation particularly, who know it primarily, who weren't old enough for the original production,
Right.
but they've known it through academic circles or in school, and they don't really know it. And that was certainly true of me and my, you know, huge ignorance about the Crucible. I really didn't know it as well as I thought I did.
So what did you do?
I
other than
listened, I listened to Richard.
No, did you go read about, I mean, did you go...
You do
I mean,
a little... No,
apart
but I'm
from,
talking
apart
about...
from the... Go ahead.
No, I'm talking just about the play itself. You have an idea of what you think the play is, and
Yeah.
you have an idea of how you think the play, the style of it, the feel of it. And I was so wrong. I was so wrong. I really didn't know.
Yeah, but who informed you that you were wrong? Did you discover that?
The experience of
doing
in
it?
rehearsal.
Yeah.
And every night now.
And also, we had Arthur was with us.
Hanging around.
Hanging around. The first 3 days of rehearsal.
loiterer.
We
Hanging
just
around.
talked. We just talked about the
Got
play.
nothing to do but hang around.
And that was invaluable, hearing Arthur talk about the genesis of the play, as well as the specifics of the play.
Yeah. It's a universal theme, though, freedom and repression.
It is now.
Yeah. Because of the play and because of life.
Well, I think people are more aware now of what's at stake in these situations. Whereas when I first wrote it, they were not conscious that this country was going through a testing. It was all news. It's interesting. We've come a long way in that respect. That is, that people now are aware that the court system and the way people are tried and the uses of fake evidence and all the rest of it is an issue for everybody to worry about. Whereas before, they thought the courts were
Perfect. Flawless.
perfect,
Yeah.
you know.
Institutions that dispense justice
Right.
in the right way.
There's a line that sometimes gets a bit of a shiver from the audience when the judge says, you either for this court or you must be counted against it, which is, John Ashcroft had a paraphrase of that the other day when he said, you are either for terrorism or you are against it, to justify the bringing in the Patriot Act and the military tribunals.
Incidentally, I read in the paper, that Ashcroft made a speech at someplace, and there was a big rotunda of some sort,
Yeah.
and a calico cat passed. Of course, you may have read this.
Yeah.
And he said that he wanted that cat removed because the devil was in it. And
And so
somebody on it-
when you heard this, what did you think?
well, I thought, here we go again. But Maureen
Salem,
Dowd,
hello?
I think, somebody on the New York Times wrote a piece saying he was wrong. The devil's only in black cats.
Tell me about you and this part, and I mean, what is the best moments of the play for you?
From the minute they say half hour to the minute we leave, actually.
They give you a half-hour warning before you hit the stage.
We have what typically happens in the theater. There's a half-hour call,
Right.
which is when we are all required to be there. Most of us are there, at, 45 minutes ahead of time.
And then there's another one at 10 minutes, or what's the next one?
Yes, then there's 15, then there's 5, then there's places.
Then there's places.
Then there's places. It's that wonderful rhythm that happens before a show.
It must be the greatest moment when you're waiting.
And what's terrific about being in a great play and in a production that I'm so happy to be in is that it takes on a life of its own over time, and the rhythm of it starts to go, and it becomes easier. It becomes easier and more joyful, even though the play has a great undertow and has great emotional depth, and we are required to go to places that are emotionally charged. All of us have such a wonderful sense of goodwill in doing it that it's really fun to do, which most people, I think, are surprised to hear when they see it, because it is a little rigorous.
Tell me about Liam. The missing
Yes.
element here is Liam.
Yes.
Who's been on the show a number of times and is not
Yes.
doing many interviews, I
No,
guess.
understandably, I must say, to Liam's
Understandable
defense.
to you.
Understandable to me, and for any actor who is really the leader of our production and is doing an unbelievable job every evening. There is something about doing press for a play, which I just learned because I was the one who was happily doing it. It's a little dangerous to talk about it when it's still forming.
Yeah.
There's something you're a little vulnerable. So I completely understand. Liam is taking care of all of us by taking care of himself. So
Why Liam?
I just thought he was probably the world's best casting. The fact that he also happens to be an international star helps.
Yeah.
But actually, he is temperamentally and physically, intellectually, emotionally, I think, perfect casting for the role.
Let me talk about those individual things, temperamentally.
He's stoical. He has a kind of dogged goodness about him. He's a very, very decent man.
Right, I know. Physically.
Physically, he's a big
fantastic.
man. You can imagine him driving a plough.
Fantastic.
You can imagine him
could,
keeping a horse-drawn plough in the furrows.
fantastic. And you don't get to work with a man of such heroic physical stature on stage very often. It doesn't happen. There aren't many of them around. They're
Big
just
guys who are
big, huge, heroic
Who fill
men who fill everything.
fill
and
the
are
character
physically-
as well as the stage,
That's
as well
right.
as the
And his heart.
Word.
He's huge-hearted and in this fantastic physical being, and it's wonderful.
I'm going to mention two things. One, Arthur has a book called On Politics and the Art of Acting, which is about the notion of acting in politics.
It's looking at politicians as actors.
Right.
It's the American people every 4 years have to cast a president. They have to go through various.
I don't know if this is. I haven't read that, but there is this notion to me that the choosing of a president is a reflection of where America is in its head, and it's also a reaction to who has been there before. In other words, after Nixon, the country went to Jimmy Carter, and after Carter, it went to Reagan. One was almost a reaction to after Clinton.
It's
Bush.
very possible.
And it is a kind of casting of what we think we need in terms of something other than issues.
Of course, this last time around, you could say there was no choice given because
it was so close.
It was so close. Yeah. It was a donation by the Supreme Court finally.
A donation to Mr. Bush.
Yeah. I mean, somebody had to say, okay, this is it.
Yeah,
So-
right, that's right, they did.
And they decided that was it.
This play in this production is also dedicated to your late wife. Thank you for coming.
Yes.
Great to see you. Thank you, Laura.
Thank you, my pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you.
On March 7th, the Crucible opens on Broadway. I am pleased to share this table with these people. Thank you for joining us. We'll see you next time.